Another idea for the primer for those who have walked away and you're perplexed by the right. Something that I want to make sure to touch on is this idea anti-modernism and this sort of this scary theory that there's good evidence for, called that I like calling Tate nationalism. And this is a major reason you end up with these people who are extremely moderate. They're really almost no greater than just very conservative Democrats that happen to like voting Republican, very likely for various reasons that are more related to taxation and regulations and such like. It's not really an issue of that they are trying to make sure that abortion is, no longer exists. That's not their bag, really. That they're not fighting that kind of fight. They're just generally what people would think of as conservative. They're not who I'm talking about. Those kind of people end up, they didn't really like Trump. They keep fighting for kind of this idea of unity and the center. They're an important group, really, because, they're an important group because you are constantly trying to red pill and black pill that group. So people like TPUSA, Charlie Kirk, and then people even like, say, Carlson, formerly of Fox, they would have been these kind of people that they were extremely moderate, actually. And then people kept poking fun at them, saying, but don't you know about this? What do you think about that? Are you going to deny this? Eventually, these men started to get swayed. They started to get swayed more and more by the criticism because they didn't know how to answer it. There was no polite, moderate retort for what they were now seeing as black people recording themselves doing horrible criminal acts of violence to other people. This was back in the Obama administration. Schools that you would see these riotous levels of fighting going on in the eating halls, hallways, and classrooms. All stuff that would go unreported. And then you would have the various comments by all of these people who you were presuming were probably white, reporting like, yep. And they, from all over the Midwest, any place that was about 100,000 people and greater, had started seeing the phenomena of intense Black American youth violence that nobody would acknowledge. And that if you actually cited, they're recording the evidence themselves, and in some cases, dancing in glee and laughing over their victims. This still didn't matter. So you see, bombarded by people recording their crimes, people like Carlson were swayed eventually. Why am I getting all these fellow moderates to say and agree with me that I should not be swayed by looking at the criminals like supervillains laughing in our faces as nobody will do anything? And this is all happening to the youth. Very important. This was all happening to the youth during the Obama administration. Very, very important to think about when you think of the famous Hillary Clinton moment where she brings up some kind of frog meme and somebody shouts out Pepe with the whole deplorables thing, and it's over. Suddenly mom has to admit she knows about your internet history. She knows you've been trolling her on Facebook and saying that she's cringe and she's tired of this, and everyone's going to now obey mommy, and nobody did. So we're all being punished as group punishment. Just my theory. But Something about all of this, though, is that there was a part of the right wing that all of this was just kind of funny. See, everybody who kept laughing and kept keeping it mirthful, they've succeeded. The people who got too serious, tried to show up places, tried to show that they could load a weapon in Washington, D.C. I think you all remember that stunt that guy pulled. There are definitely people who they became fundamentally grifters. But there's a bunch of people that what they ended up doing quietly changed American and world political history. People have no idea the incredible power that Mr. Medicare ended up having in the circles of nationalism and the kinds of discussions around internet blood sports and things like that. Especially nobody really knows and nobody will face that the reason why you don't have some true wild and crazy neo-Nazi or white supremacist movement, like anybody who's older than about 40 could remember, there were guys like that would show up to punk shows. They would have like weird like way back in the 70s and 80s, they had like weird bunkers and stuff that they would build in places and try to start colonies of people of like-mindedness in that regard. But that, you're kind of like, yeah, but nobody does that anymore. And you're right, nobody does that anymore. And so those guys got laughed off the internet. People like Richard Spencer ended up with a very, very minute following among anybody on the right, to the point where there's sort of this world of people who just try to see what crazy stuff is in what crazy way is Richard Spencer trying to grift now. He's now that kind of character on the internet. So most of this threat from that side, it just wasn't there. These people didn't have lasting power. They didn't have staying power. They didn't know how to tap into something that would keep going and make their movement a true mass movement that eventually would have to go from its dynamic phase into its active phase. They couldn't ever do that. They couldn't get the dynamic phase to go to something active. And when they did, it was cringeworthy and hilarious. And that was the worst part, is even on the right, people were like, what was this supposed to be? And then this became the famous thing too, of the people who were fun and funny were then like, why are you guys so serious all the time and insane? Like, now you're going to just go to jail and it won't be funny at all, And so there began this sort of weird world of, we're very serious, and this is all internet people. So nobody's taking in regards this whole kind of group of people that they just live in the hinterlands of the United States. They live in the areas of 100,000 people and fewer. And it's just a different lifestyle. And there's only so many people who are really appealing to that kind of crowd. Like, that they were like, yeah, you legitimately just have to live a certain lifestyle, because otherwise, you would run out of fuel or food by a certain time of the year, things like that. Just totally rational. Everything being just rational. There was no emotional arguments going on. Such people like that, they at one time were more moderate in a lot of times in their voting. And they were, as well as like Kirk and Carlson, being slowly moved like an iceberg. And that was my whole thing, is I'm like, no, this is an iceberg. Once this moves, it's going to keep crushing everything in its way. All you have to do is warm things up with a little humor. And people like me There's Styx Hexenhammer. A lot of these people that they just weren't over serious people. They were just pointing out how there was this kind of this new culture of irrational morons that were allowed to kind of do whatever they wanted to people, and that this would go horribly wrong because all collectivist movements that use political goonery always go wrong. And so you end up getting these groups, civic nationalists, kind of us jokers, laughers. We really try to convince people, and especially we polish the stone until it's a mirror. But then the thing is the best is doing it with humor. Do it with humor, you do it with style, it warms everything up, starts moving the iceberg of the moderates, and it moves them to the right. Because they become horrified of what they see on the left. The Christian right, they're made up of a number of different groups, and now these groups have decided, the Orthodox, the Catholics, and the Protestants on the right have all decided they have their differences, they are not coming together, that's okay, and they know, though, who their mutual enemy is. That's fundamentally the mentality they have, and that's what that young millennial kind of thing created. And so everyone sits there and makes fun of each other's denominations, and keeps it funny. They try to keep it funny. Because they know there's this horrible bunch of truth that they have to face about how things are going, and then there's really not. So the Tate nationalism, this is the thing I want to allude to as, this is a theory that comes out of especially the geneticists' end, and the behavior based around genetics people, that they really want to get people used to this idea. If you create an environment meant to create Attila the Hun, you will get Attila the Hun. It's just a matter of, if you get thousands of them, one of these guys is going to become the hetman. You're bequeathing yourself this. If you want to bequeath yourself this, then you're on track, is what a lot of these people are starting to, they've been trying to get this across. And they said, so they would even address the right and say, so you guys need to start thinking very clearly about this. If you start getting people like this popping up in society more and more and more, you're going to have to decide whether to cultivate them or cull them. That's just how that's going to go. And they will cite things about history along these lines. Oh, well, when there was lots of lead in the water, and sometimes to even very recent little windows of time. Like some period of time where some small country was shockingly violent toward, its neighbor, or something. And like, how was that even created? Like, what was the environment that they were able to create such a soldiery that was able to do that? Well, these people are warning the right. Like, this is just how this is going to, you're building the environment. Once you build that environment and you get the results of that environment, you better have a plan to cull what comes out of it or cultivate it. Because somebody's going to. And so this is one of these things. So Tate nationalism of this hard kind of Sharia embracing, hard rules embracing, and hard discipline embracing type of mentality that one is seeing in the manosphere, in the world of men online and stuff. It's something that even on the right, there's a lot of, like, the smartest of the smart are warning them, like, no, you just know what you're seeing here. What do you want to do about this? Because you better handle this the right way. Or you could get a fascinating mixture of Pinochet and Tito, and who knows, who knows what fascinating, character that you might end up raising, who will set their order upon the world around them. So yeah, just so you understand. So it's not like people are like worried about this. This is just like a kind of a theoretical thing that's been brought up by a handful of people. That it's like, watch out what you wish for, because it's the helicopter tour business, could go completely out of control. Now, if you don't know the reference to that, you're going to have to look up Augusto Pinochet. I would suggest looking up. There's a number. See, the right started to talk about with people who were there what it was like, what happened, and it's a different story than you heard in college. So, all right, later.